All right.
All right, go.
Okay. So here I introduce, basically, when the earthquake hits and you lose all the roads and you're isolated, what's behind you is your way out. It's your link to the outside world. It's what's going to be absolutely critical. But one thing I want to do is I'd like everyone in here to take a look to the person to your right and to your left.
This is just like church.
Yeah, we're just not going to shake hands right now. So the reality is, and this comes from 4 years of working the East Coast hurricanes, and that's with a week and a half notice. There's still, many communities were dependent on these type of aircraft to maintain their connectivity. People lived and did not die because general aviation pilots flew out. And we're talking loads of 60,000 pounds in a week, 200,000 pounds, 500,000 pounds. They sustained. Prior to the West Coast WEGARP effort that we're leading, what this is about, the person to your left and to your right, if this earthquake happened now, that's your primary help. You guys are in this together. You're going to get through this together. And that's going to be the difference of whether or not you make it or not, and the people you love and care about make it or not. We're all in this together, and you're the core that makes this work. Do we have any pilots here today? I'd like the pilots to stand up, please. I want you guys to take a look. They're your lifeline. No state, no feds, no FEMA for at least the first 3 days, possibly 2 to 3 weeks. It's not coming in on these planes. It's not coming in. So let that sink in. And for the pilots, thank you. Your communities will make it through this because you flew. And that's all we're asking you to do. And that is a huge difference, and it's a game changer in every sense of the word. So with that said, let's see how to make it happen. So I'm going to show 2 videos. One video is related to waterborne operations that we've done over in Jefferson County. The other video is land-based operations that we did at BLI last year.
That's Bellingham.
Bellingham, sorry. BLI is the airport code for Bellingham International. And I just want you to have a visual orientation so when we go into the actual training, the safety documentation, you have a frame of reference visually for you. Okay? All right, so this is Jefferson County. This is right below Jefferson County International on the water. It's just some verbiage talking about what the video is about. I just want you, this is visually for you, just want you to see what we're doing.
This is stupid, but would it be better if the screen were higher, the whole screen for?
We can't make it any higher. That's
Oh,
what you can-
sorry. A little late here.
Kim Ware has about, I think, 15.
This is ground training you guys are going through.
Commercial and private. This is everything. So, I mean, there's probably at least
how do you do the
200
volume?
Front of the
seaplanes in the Washington, Puget Sound region.
As loud as it goes.
But we've also,
you have
this is
to
international.
do it louder on your computer.
Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. Better? Okay. Thank you for being patient with our technical difficulties. That's the play game. We'll talk about that. That's how they know you're there, where to come in. Flood operations, you're going to get wet. Unavoidable. This is why you need a ground crew. It takes a lot of people in the middle of the day. So that's the water side of the house.
Can you pause that? They'll go on to the next one. Why don't we go over a few things that they saw in this video so they understand what it is they're looking at, like how to guide the plane in from the water, where
Okay.
to grab it.
Yeah, like I said, the slides will get more in depth of it, but basically, the neon orange flagging, this is what we normally use. Reason we do this is this color is not normal in nature, so from altitude it's much easier to spot, so that the pilots know where to come in if they're on a water-based approach. It's a 1-inch piece of tubing, 10 feet long, you just cut it in half. Basically, as the planes approach, you see them overhead, we'll be flying this back and forth and they'll be able to see it. And then you just stand on the beach and they come right to you. And that's what we've been training our float pilots on in terms of where to beach and how to know where to go. We've been doing this since 2009. Yes?
Alright, so you had pretty good weather conditions for that drill. I didn't see any waves, I didn't see any high winds. You're probably not going to be that fortunate.
So you do need to have, when you're doing open ocean, most of these aircraft of the type that you just saw, they can't do much more above a 2 to 3 swell height. So if it's above that, you're not going to see them anyways. The problem is when they come in on their glide approach, if the waves are too big, they'll hit the crest of another and then nose in and get turtled. So they have to have a certain level. It's not going to be glass. They can do some rough water. It just can't be too large. Now the otters and beavers, which are much larger aircraft, can handle a little bit rougher seas. Think widgeons and gooses, flying boats can handle a little bit more rougher. So it varies, but that's one of the reasons we don't send planes out unless we have some kind of ham radio link, satellite, some kind of link letting us know what the sea conditions are so that we don't send one out that can't land due to the sea conditions. The other one is if you do have a bunch of crap on the shoreline and it's just not beachable, there's a boat to float transfer option, and we'll talk about that in the video. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All right, before we go any further, just FYI, we have somebody to do marshaling, which is handling the flags and guiding the planes in at Langley Airport Park, but we don't have anybody for Oak Harbor. He's doing Langley. So if anybody here starts to feel comfortable or has been through the training before as well, and you want to be involved with the marshaling, again, we need somebody in Oak Harbor for the June 18th drill. If you feel comfortable with that, come up and see us.
Okay. So that's water-based approach. Now I'm going to show you a video of what we did last year over at Bellingham International, where we moved roughly, I think, 2,200 pounds of food and PPE supplies to Point Roberts and Walla Walla. All right, so this is what happened when we're doing the land side of things, and this is what you guys are going to see a lot come June 18th.
being brought in that's donated is the largest single amount of donated food the island has ever had.
Wow.
We're bringing in 16,000 pounds of donated food, split between Oak Harbor and Langley and split between the 4 food banks throughout the area. When the planes land and they stop props and they're getting ready to unload, all the boxes will be marked with poundage on it and what they are. And hopefully you'll have dollies, I know we will at Langley, to move the product to the spot where the suppliers are going to segregate the food by category and then help the food bank load it up.
So that's a snapshot of what you guys get to do here. So you can see, GA is the gateway. When all the roads are out and everything goes south, the first 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, you just saw how your communities will survive because of these pilots that are willing to fly. It really is in many ways that simple. But now we get to, yeah.
So we got 80,000 people on the island. We're going to redo the Berlin food loop or something? I mean, is that the plan?
Yeah, the expectation, and not to put you on the spot, maybe you can speak a little bit to this after I get done. But within the first 2 to 3 weeks, most of that time, the National Guard, FEMA, feds are going to still be trying to spool up and figure out where to even start. So what you're looking at is the ferries are down, the bridges are down, the roads are down, but you still need to get food in, supplies out, and all that type of stuff, and rescuers and everything. So this is how it's going to come in. We're the most readily ready resource, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, within our state, let alone the whole western seaboard, that we are wiring through what Duran and I and others are doing to be a hair trigger that goes and basically starts mobilizing before the earthquake stops with a text alert system we've developed.
And
So it's a full-on Berlin airlift with no notice. That's the change.
all these pilots that donating their time and fuel, it's all coming out of their pocket.
You're making some assumptions about availability of fuel. How much fuel do we have here?
Well, I can tell you that they're working on trying to get a grant to redo the airport. It obviously needs it. But right outside, without asking Blake, I have no idea.
Okay, because Naval Air Station Whidbey, all their fuel comes in by barge. Okay, so, you know, we're gonna be out of Jet A and avgas in the probably before your 3 weeks.
We have a solution to that, which I'll go over in the safety training. But basically, we've developed a text alert system that before the earthquake ends, the fuel flyers that fly the DC-4s, Electras, C-47s up in Alaska and Canada will know we had the earthquake. They will know how far down the coast the earthquake has run. And they will know to start pinging FEMA and saying, all right, we got to get down there, let us down there. At the same time, Epic Fuels, 66, Fuel Ave will also know, oh, holy crap, we just lost the West Coast. We need to start getting the fuel into Walla Walla. The planes will come out of Alaska and they'll start flying over the hump. They're not going to come here. You might have to fly to Bellingham or Arlington to get refueled. But that is a part of this plan, is to make sure fuel is able to restart within a couple of days. And we also, one of the reasons we have taught the hams, and this is why it's so important, Bob, is to let the hubs know and Walla Walla know what your fuel status is. Because once the fuel starts hitting Walla Walla and the planes start coming to Walla Walla, then we're going to see if you're dead in the water here, then we're going to probably make sure Arlington is completely maxed out on all its avgas and Jet A. So at least you're just a hop over the water to get refueled. That's the system we've developed. So that is being addressed. It's just going to take continued time, but that's what we have been practicing. Last year when we did this, Epic Fuels pinged every one of their tanker trucks and every one of their rail cars real time once the red flights arrived at Walla Walla saying all the roads are out. And what we got was it would be 48 hours for the first fuel truck to hit Walla Walla, and I think 4 days for Jet A. So that was a real live, if that had been the moment, rediverting all their tanker trucks and all their rail cars into Walla Walla so it can be flown over the pass. So that is being addressed.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, I have a decade of experience working with railroads. We can't repair a rail that quickly. Okay?
We're talking east side. They're going to fly from Walla Walla over the hump, just like the Berlin Airlift or the China-Burma hump during World War II. That's what we're preparing. That's the best solution we found. Otherwise, there is no real other solution right now on the table.
On the food issue, that's why they tell you to have 72 hours.
14 days.
Now we're saying 14 days, because this one, you're not gonna be able to get there. The other thing is the water. You can have water, some of that's gonna be available, so it's the all count, you need everybody.
Yeah.
And aviation will get to places where the water can't get to. Water, food, bulk, you're gonna get to locations people can't get to.
Yeah. And we can use stretches of highways or long stretches of roads. These are small planes. A lot of these ones can land on a two-country highway, two-country road.
Are all the flights based here on, are all the flights based here on Whidbey? Or are they coming from all over?
So we work and function, what we have found that works best is a regional approach. I mean, I put the request out and I imagine the pilots across our entire state. For June 18th, we have 20 planes coming out of Canada.
Oh.
That's where your food's originating from. And once they get 20,000 pounds into BLI, you're going to start seeing some Canadian planes coming down here too. So it is this nation's general aviation fleet in a regional capacity supporting communities to keep them going until the regular military can get here. We're the stopgap. Just like this patch says, into the breach. When it breaks wide open, we jump in and we hold the line until the military and the regular guys can get here. We buy that critical time so we don't lose lives and you get the supplies you need. That's what this is all about, is keeping the communities going. But it doesn't work without the ground support team. It doesn't work without people on the hams talking to the hub locations. It doesn't work without the people unloading the planes. It's a three-legged stool: hams, ground support, the pilots. All three have to be working very closely together for that to be as effective as it can possibly be and keep sustaining communities.
And to expand on Vicky's question, on Whidbey Island, we only have one pilot that's from Whidbey that's participating, because our DART program is just starting up. All the pilots, the 60-plus planes that are going to be coming and going for June 18th, are from other areas, including Canada.
Is Camino participating at all?
Not yet, no. We're just starting the DART program up. That's
Right,
what
right,
this is all
okay.
about.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you put your little doohickey in there?
Yep, it's working. All right. Is the video going? Cool. Okay, so this is your ground training safety. We already talked about this. The purpose is basically make you safe around these aircraft. So there's no accidents, no mishaps. Everyone stays safe and intact and in one piece. For analogy purposes, you saw the video. The core of it is you need to think about a World War II aircraft carrier deck. You got a bit more space in than what you would have on one of those, but as far as the dangers and working around the moving aircraft and everything like that, it's not too different. All right. We will go over the aircraft behind after we get through the PowerPoint. Pilots always have ultimate say. It is their aircraft, they know best. So if they say no, that's it. There's no discussion. All right? You need to do exactly what the pilot tells you to do. So one of the things that is a high priority is develop a safety officer. Have at least one person whose only job is to watch everyone else. And if there's something that is of concern, they call it. Keep everyone safe. Okay, when it comes to water-based operations, and a lot of this is going to have a lot of water-based focus because basically, as you saw within the first video, there's a lot more plane-person interaction. There's a lot more potential danger for harm or injury. Land-based, it's a little easier. When you're talking about a seaplane, if you look to the amphibian behind you, when you're doing a boat-to-float approach, That tail section is your biggest danger area because it's a lot closer to the water and your boat. These planes, even though they're obviously strong to be in the air and deal with the weather, a boat can put a pretty damaging hole into a plane very easily, and you can damage some critical components without much effort. So it's really important to be aware of that. Never approach, even if it's land or water. This is regardless whether land or water. If the propeller is moving, you should not be going towards the front of that aircraft. That is not a position you should find yourself in. You need to avoid that. You cannot see where the edge of a propeller is. It goes way too fast, so you cannot assume where that edge line is. You just don't approach from the front. All right, you saw it in the video. This is another example. It just takes a lot more movement around. You're touching the floats. And we're going to go over afterwards the hands-on, what not to touch, what you can touch. That right there is called a wing rope. Now that's meant to be used to maneuver the plane around, make it a little easier. The thing is, you never touch it unless you know what you're doing with it, because there are ways of touching it that can cause the plane to move that can be dangerous to those around you. You need to understand that. If you're doing dockside stuff, normally the ropes you're going to deal with is what's attached to the float. So there and there. The wing line we generally leave alone most of the time. Okay, this is important to understand. This is your amphibian gear, that's the front wheel. Take a look at, this is called a turboprop, okay? The biggest danger with turboprops is those props are in front of the stops by about probably 10, 12 inches or something along those lines, or more. That becomes dangerous in a dockside situation because if you grab a rope, you could spin the whole plane and put the prop over the dock and into someone potentially. The other one is turboprops are one of the few where you saw that plane in the video, it comes in, it cuts power, then we go out and we turn it around. Those have a reverse. They don't come in at a dead stop. They come in, turn around, and then back up. So knowing the difference is important. It's pretty easy to spot though. The turboprop is the only one that has a really narrow pointy nose. It's pretty long compared to the rest of the plane. A lot of times they have the big honking exhaust too out the sides. In this case we're using both ropes, but we know what we're doing with it. We're experienced crew. We're moving it to another side of the dock. Okay, again, just like aircraft carrier deck, you're manhandling these aircraft a lot more often in a lot more areas. Now in this case, he is working in the horizontal plane. Basically, the plane was pointing this way. We're moving it to point this way because we needed to work from the other side of the aircraft. And we'll go over this in the hands-on, but there are places you can grab the tail structure. There are places you do not want to grab the tail structure. And if you do it and there's someone in the cockpit and they move something, you might lose a finger. So you need to know where to and where not to grab. We will go over that in the hands-on. Generally, this is a horizontal stabilizer or horizontal control surface. The outer parts that don't move is generally what you grab. You don't grab where the joints are, because that's where it can slice things off. This is called a float pivot maneuver. This is something that you might see at your beach. In some aircraft, they might want to come out, they might need to come out of the water for one reason or another. In certain cases, the wind direction will make it. If you're trying to come out this way on the beach, this is your beach line, the wind can do it to such a degree that the plane can't get its tail to the wind and the front lined up. Basically, those tail surfaces are big sails, just like a sailing boat. If you have a wind like you have today, and it's coming from the wrong direction, you can have a really tough time trying to orientate the aircraft. Sometimes you need someone to actually become an anchor point to spin the plane around the anchor point. This is called a float pivot maneuver. I'm holding on to this pontoon as he is under full power to align himself so that he can come out of the water. I weigh about 165, I'm about 5'11". You really don't want someone much shorter or weighing much less than that doing this. Because there's a lot of power and weight to that aircraft. You need to be a position that stays stable. You're holding on to the float strut and this strut. Those are hard points, that's okay. The plane will be strong enough to do that. It comes around, you let go. Thing to remember, seaplanes do not have brakes. So if I let go at the wrong point, I could send them right into another plane. You need to know what you're doing. This is a low wing plane, another example of you can walk up the ring route. We'll look over it on that one. Normally the ones where they are allowing you to walk, it will have some kind of black coating on it to cover it so you know where to step. Again, don't step on anything that's controlled moving surfaces. Do that in the hands-on. Every plane's different, but these are strong points. Doors are generally not necessarily something you want to grab, but that's what you're doing. All right, propellers. Never grab a propeller. This is not like a normal car. Some of these engines work off compression, and under certain circumstances, if you grab it and swing it down, it will turn over. And you might lose something valuable. Don't touch the props. We talked about turboprops. So the propeller arc. Again, if you imagine the propeller's moving, so that one's a good example. To your right there, the very tip, that whole circle is called the arc. You just don't put anything through that arc surface, whether it's going or not. The other thing to keep in mind is if you're working on a dock or a land-based operation out here and there's a strong wind, just keep your distance in terms of what if you trip and fall into it. Just don't be around the front. It's not a place you should ever be. There's no reason for you to be there. When we talk about something here, so what this is talking about is if you're in a beaching situation and you're in the water, you saw how I was. Normally if you're starting to do moving the floats, trying to move the plane around, you'll be up to probably about your shin in the water. Now let's say you have a beach full of 10 to 12 different aircraft and you're trying to get planes in and out. There is always that potential that the safety officer or the ground marshaller, the head one, there's a mix-up in communication and a plane leaves and you turn around and there's another plane coming right at you. If you're up to your shins or thighs in the water and it's coming at you and that pilot doesn't see you, one, that shouldn't have happened. There's been a serious flaw in communication. Everything we do should prevent that from occurring. But if that happens, you're not going to be able to run through the water fast enough. Your point of exit is basically to dive under or swim away. If it's a pontoon like the plane behind you, and I find myself looking at the prop and I'm dead center, I'd actually just fall back in the water and let it go over me and then pop back up afterwards. But you're not going to be able to outrun it. The water's going to be too much of a drag for you. Does that make sense? Okay. It's also one of the reasons if you're working in a shore environment and you're not on a dock but a shore environment, generally you're not going to be in the water higher than your knees, sometimes sides depending on the aircraft. You really don't want you to have a life jacket. Now I know this is counterintuitive. It's one of the reasons I always suggest that there's a water rescue team on hand. But your method of escape is going to be to swim away or lay back if you get in one of those situations, which again, you should make it all possible to make sure that doesn't happen. Good communication, good control of the aircraft. But if that happens, you need to be able to get out of the way quick. A life jacket will hinder your ability to swim. It will hinder your ability to dive. Your exit point is either underwater or swim away. Or run out if you can, depending on how deep you're in the water. That's one of the things that's counterintuitive, because I know if you think certain water rescue and stuff like that, you always think of the life jacket. The problem is the life jacket puts you too close to the business end of the plane and the propeller. Underwater or away is your better approach. Okay? So unfortunately, we don't have Wi-Fi here. I will, we have this PowerPoint. Ron should have it. I suggest watching this video. On that video, you have someone. Sometimes pilots will check the prop tips and the edges to make sure there's no damage if they've been on a dirt strip or something like that. And they'll rotate through. Okay, and they'll check and rotate it around. Yeah.
We can set up a hot spot later after lunch and show that video.
Thank you very much. Yes,
Or-
okay, so we'll
or
do
If
that.
it doesn't work, we'll post it on the CERT website, so you can pull it up anytime you want.
And basically what this video will show, which that would be great if we could do that, Reeve, thank you so much,
You're welcome.
is the individual was feeling the prop, turning it around, feeling the next prop, turning it. Well, on about the third time he did that, the whole engine started, full speed. And he basically pulled back, and it just skimmed his arm. Came as close as you ever want to getting eaten by a prop. The compression of turning the propeller caused it to turn over and actually start. Now you saw with the seaplanes, when you're working in and around them on the water, you're right near the prop. You have to. You got to manage the floats. Don't, if you lose your balance, go in the water. Don't grab the prop. Okay? Just don't touch the prop. All right, does that make sense? What is it we don't touch? Okay.
It's like 4th grade.
Well, when you see the video, you'll understand why. You don't get to make that kind of mistake normally. That's the last mistake you literally ever make. Okay, so we talked about the life jackets. Again, sloping beach, you're only up to your knees in water. Don't wear a life jacket. It's just going to hinder you if you got to get out of the way. If you're on a dock, yes, have a life jacket because you can be totally, if you fall in, you're going swimming. Should always have a water rescue unit on standby if you're doing float operations. All right, 4-dimensional, 3-dimensional environment, head on a 360. Basically, this is, right here is focused to seaplanes, but it applies to land planes too. Look up. Those wings on some of these smaller aircraft, like the one behind you or a typical Cessna 180, 185, especially if you're tall, that rear control surface is pretty much right at forehead height. So if you're looking down and not paying attention to the up, you can get a nice little Cessna mark, which is what you call if you hit hard enough and it, split your forehead a little bit. So look up, 3-dimensional environment, all right? If someone's walking off the float, tell them to look up so they don't run into the rear horizontal stabilizer as they're trying to get off the float in the seaplane if they're in the water. All right, so, can I get this one adjusted? Yes. All right, so this is something that's unique to waterborne operations. Again, when you're dealing with seaplanes, the wind dictates. It cannot always override the weather vane in nature of the seaplane in terms of where it's going to orientate, okay? We've seen where we've had 3 or 4 planes, and let's say this guy starts to head out, but we have a wind like we have today that's perpendicular. As soon as he clears these 2 planes, it's going to spin him into the wind. It'll turn him back into the wind. So the thing is, you don't want to park them right next to each other. You got to have some spacing. So as soon as he clears the windbreak, he doesn't slam his tail into this guy. The other one that you might need to do is potentially have someone hold the rear float, not the float but the rope, just to kind of make sure its tail gets straight, stays straight, and doesn't get swung out until he's cleared those planes. So you might need someone to kind of walk out a little bit with it. Make sense? Okay. All right. So this is again that float pivot and maneuver. That's called a CB. That's what I was working with that day. Always use only the hard points that are designated. Every pilot will let you know. Don't just assume. Okay, this is really important. All traffic stops. If I've got a beach 6, 7 planes wide, and I got a plane that's going to come out and we're going to do one of these maneuvers, you just create a buffer zone. You don't let anyone else try to leave or come onto the beach until that maneuver is done. Because you will have someone in the water that is in the business area of other planes. So everything shuts down until that maneuver is done if you have to do that. Most planes, you don't have to do that. In this particular case, they didn't put a big enough water rudder on the CB, and we had a really strong side wind that was the wrong direction. We could not get this thing tail into the wind, and it had to come out of the water because of the way it sat in the water and what the wind was doing to it on the beach. So that is, I've only had to do it once, but you might run into that, so you need to be familiar with that. So we call it the float pivot maneuver. That's doing that. All right. Let's see here. So if you're doing a boat to float transfer, which is kind of what you guys were talking about earlier in terms of if the beach is all messed up, there's a lot of debris, but you have a 9-foot skiff that you could just push through the debris to do a transfer further out in the water where it's safer, this becomes an option. Planes will normally weather vane at a 45-degree angle. You want to wait until the plane stops and cuts its power before you come up to it. Again, never grab a wing rope. That rope that's dangling from the wing, never grab that unless you're taught when to and when not to, or directed by the pilot or ground crew with experience. In general, your Kodiaks, not Kodiaks, like 10-foot skiffs, catamaran, semi-rigid, stuff without superstructure boat-wise is what you want to use when you're doing a boat to float transfer. You don't want anything that's going to potentially hit the wing or the rear horizontal stabilizer. So this is me doing a boat to float transfer. Obviously, you'd probably want to do a little bit of a bigger boat to carry the supplies in and out, maybe more people in and out. This is just what they had on hand. The pilot's normally on the left side for most aircraft, I think all aircraft, co-pilot's right. This particular case, because he knew we were coming and he had just left the beach, we approached from the right, and we actually had someone in there so they could talk to the pilot to know we were coming up on him. Typically, you'd want to approach from behind and to the left to make sure the pilot sees you. Okay?
Sky?
Yeah.
Just for everybody's information, Island County also has a group called CRAT, I believe it's called, which are boaters that are going to be part of the disaster Department of Emergency Management if and when the shit hits the fan. So we'll have bigger boats to be able to carry supplies back and forth.
Cool. That's me getting up on the plane. You just bring the skiff right into the side of the pontoon. Obviously, the bigger planes can do bigger skiffs, smaller planes, smaller skiffs. What you will find is the seaplane is actually rock solid. It actually felt like stepping from a boat onto a non-moving dock. It didn't move an inch. And if you look over there, you've got a ton of superstructure. You've got the wing root, you've got all this structure underneath the plane tied to the float you can grab, and the actual pontoon's pretty stable and solid too. So that's not an issue. The boat was more of a problem because it wanted to keep jumping away from me as I'm trying to get on the float. So you're going to have more problems with the boat staying stable than anything with the seaplane. It's a really solid platform. Again, unless the engine's cut off, don't approach. Approach from the pilot's side, from the side or rear, but make sure he can see you. He's aware of you. And we talked about weather vane. All right, this is a big one for your location down the street here. Tidal approach. If it's an outbound tide, you know, this is an event after the major earthquake. We know we could have reoccurring tsunamis, we could have reoccurring aftershocks and things like that. We don't want a seaplane getting caught on the shore because the tide went out. So you're going to need to have people on either side keep it just away from the, you know, near the shore, but not so near that the tide goes out and it's grounded. In reality, if this is the real thing, you're only going to have a seaplane come in there to drop its load or load up and go. It's not hanging around because we don't want anything on the Puget Sound for any length of time other than to accomplish a specific task. So it doesn't get caught by a subsequent aftershock or tsunami or something like that.
And what Sky's talking about, for those of you who are not from here, is about a few blocks down to the left you have a boat ramp. So we can not only have seaplanes coming in, But here we can have fixed aircraft, fixed wing.
So,
It's an Amber Alert.
oh,
I was gonna say, I hope we're not having the
I was like, we have the show now?
If we're all together.
Yeah, right, we're all ready to go.
Yeah.
And we got the planes, we're good. General beach requirements, nice gentle sloping beach, no rocks bigger than 2 inches in diameter, no rough, sharp stuff. Again, the seaplanes are pretty sturdy, but any of these kind of things, it does not take a huge amount to punch a hole in the skin. They're not like boats, you gotta be gentle with these planes, okay? Okay, this is a big one. Don't grab, push any small protruding antenna from an aircraft surface. I don't care if it's a float or if it's a land-based. If it's small and protruding, it's likely a component the pilot needs for the plane to fly. Don't grab it, don't bump it, stay clear of it. One of the things that you saw in the video is if you're trying to back a seaplane up onto a beach, sometimes you'll get under the tail and you'll kind of walk it up and use your shoulder to push it up. Well, we used to have helmets as a requirement. We dropped that because on one of the drills, a guy with a helmet, because it gives you a false sense of security with your head, knocked off the transponder. So, in that case, the plane was still able to fly, albeit though it wasn't able to get picked up on radar anymore. So, we dropped the helmet. You need to know where your head is. You can't assume it's protected. You need to have a 360-degree up-down vertical awareness of where your body parts are in relation to control surfaces on the plane. You got to be careful, okay? Any questions on that? Yeah.
I do remember you said no hats.
Yep, and we're going to go into that. If I forget it, remind me, but we should do that.
We will.
I was going to make sure, I want to do it on a spot where I actually have a picture to show you.
Okay, you good.
Okay. So one of the things was just brought to my attention, I'd like to introduce, so Ray works with the National Tribal Emergency Management Council. He's a ham operator. He's also was one of the ones that was a part of the Arlington Tribal Airlift of PPE and food and supplies during the January, December, February timeframe. One of the things that we do when we do our operations is we use FlightAware a lot to track the pilot. So if we know we have an overdue pilot, we can send in the cavalry to figure out where they went down. There's one quirk when you're dealing with seaplane pilots though. They can go off the radar and it has nothing to do with them crashing, they're just wanting to check out a lake. So if you're on a team that's actually tracking the aircraft, if they suddenly disappear and then you look at a map and it's over water, they likely didn't go down. And Ray, I'd like you just to share your story on that because I think it's a good awareness thing for the teams as they track this come June 18th because we will have amphibians as a part of this.
Yeah, so a big part of what I was doing was tracking the planes because the receiving end was typically fire departments. And they can't dedicate their entire day sitting there waiting for a plane. So what we do is I'd track them, and when they're about 15, 20 minutes out, I'd have the ham radio operator get a hold of the ham operator, in this case that OMAC, and tell the fire department, okay, you need to be there to pick up the food supplies in about 15, 20 minutes. Well, we had his float plane going, and he disappeared. He crested the Cascades and was gone. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. And then I realized, oh, wait a second, that's Lake Chelan. He's a float plane. So I watched the end of Lake Chelan, the other end, and sure enough, he pops back up. Well, in talking with him, it made perfectly good sense. Water is their safety. Water is their runway. They have an emergency runway anywhere if there's a large enough bit of water. And so they naturally dive down and follow the terrain. And he said that's just perfectly normal. Expect me to do that anytime that I'm flying and in close to water. And he actually, I told him that we're going to be watching him coming back. He said, don't watch me coming back. I'm flying the Columbia River Valley all the way back. You're not going to see it. So just something to keep in mind that, you know, what may seem odd, like you were talking about not wearing a life jacket and just kind of counterintuitive. With float planes, there's some unique things that if they jump off the radar, it's probably because they're in their safe zone over top of water.
Okay, thank you, Ray.
And dovetailing off what he says about planes, besides the food being the largest amount of donated food on Whidbey Island, the number of pilots that are going to be flying in here on June 18th is going to be setting a record as well. We're going to have dozens of aircraft coming and going. And we have to work with the Navy, which we've been doing, because it's going to crowd the hell out of the airspace.
So this one's unique to float planes. I'm getting you over, I know you don't have rivers, but also this is going to be videoed and it's going to go to other counties that have similar operations on June 18th and do have rivers. We're not flying anything in rivers, but it's good information to know. So these are pretty large aircraft and they're pretty strong and fairly tough. But if they're taking off and they're 70 miles an hour and there's a log that's in the river that came around the bend and they didn't know about it, that could put you a really big hole in that hole and cause a major problem. So when you're dealing with rivers, you need to think ahead and have basically a debris spotter way upriver that's far enough up but still within communication of the departure point at the base of the river operations, so that if a plane's about to depart, you can say, oh no, there's a log, hold them off, stop them, don't let them go. And that can get taught to the pilot so the pilot doesn't catch something really unexpected on the way out.
Can the pilots see logs floating around in town?
They normally, before they land, they will overfly an area to do that. It's just standard practice, so it's less of an issue. But in a river where it's always changing, the thing is with seaplanes, if you know your pilot that just got his license probably is going to not do a whole lot of tricky river takeoffs. But your more experienced pilot, and I've seen a video of it where the pilot started here and then gained speed, had an S, and then did another S, and that's when he had enough speed to break the water and fly out. So they kind of operate like a jet ski when they're on the step, so they don't necessarily have to come off a straight shot, which means you can have a blind spot that there's a log coming around a corner at the time he's exiting. So having a spotter up there prevents that. A lot of my job I do is to keep the pilots safe, not just to help communities, but to try to anticipate what nature's going to throw at me. So that these guys are safe at all times. You guys have every asset and resource you can get access to. And that's what we're talking about. This is one of the ways where nature can throw us a curveball that can be really disastrous. This is how we prevent that from actually occurring. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so Zodiac, semi-rigids without antenna structure, that's your boat types for the boat to float stuff. Pilots will determine their landing when it's doing water. You know, they're going to look at, that's one of the nice things about this. So one of the reasons I made it really big is in a really strong wind, if it's doing this and you're staying still, the pilot knows, oh, it's going to be a really windy landing, and now he kind of has a wind direction. It's alternate windsock sort of. But we're not telling them anything other than 2-foot swells, choppy water, or things like that for the waterborne side. For the land-based operation, clouds are so high. Well, you know, when I came here, we had a pilot that was considering coming, so I took a snapshot from the runway going that way and that way so he could see where the cloud deck was and the approach path. It's just giving information so that they know what they're flying into before they depart, or if they even should depart. With this state, we did operations where we had so many microclimates during the wintertime when we were airlifting the stuff for the National Tribal Emergency Management Council that I had pilots that were still stuck at airports. I had pilots that were up in the air and actually doing loads, just because we had these little microclimates all over the Puget Sound region giving us havoc. But we got it moved 29,000 pounds, so we still got stuff doing. It's one of the things, we work best as a regional resource, because it means we really don't run out of resources. Because even if I got a couple of pilots tied in and stuck at one airport due to a cloud deck, I could very well and always have had other airports where are wide open and they can get up and start doing runs. So it makes a difference. Talked about that always approach from the pilot side, whether you're a boat to float or they mow the grass.
Yeah, who's coming and going, but they're usually not this busy.
You always approach from the pilot's side. Whether it's a land-based or water-based, you approach from the pilot's side. Make sure he sees you. Don't just come in and never come from the front, always from the side. If you get a situation where the seaplane gets out there and it can't take off, or it comes in on a dead engine and it needs to be towed, basically your best thing to do is to take the boat, lash it to the pontoon, and guide it in that way. Don't try to tow it with a bridle or anything like that. Remember, those surfaces are great sail. So if it's a windy day like this, you're going to have a really bad time trying to tow it. It's going to work a lot better if whatever boat you're using is strapped to it really good to guide it to where you need it to go if it needs an assist. All right, like that. Okay, this is unique to float planes. They generally need temperature to be 20.
Talk louder.
This is unique to float planes. It's the first time I've competed with a lawnmower. They need temperature to be 25 to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Basically, the flying boats are the worst of it because they're so low to the water. All that spray they kick up turns into ice on the wings. So they just don't like to operate if it's lower than that because you have a serious icing problem. And basically, planes kind of fall out of the sky like a rock if they get ice on the wings. That is a bad situation. All right, we already talked about that. Some more safety aspects. Again, this is, remember when I was talking about being in the water, you got planes coming and going and stuff like that. This would be one of those situations where if this plane had just left and maybe he was closer, and I turn around and that guy's coming at me, well, I'm not going to be able to outrun him, but I can just lean back or I can swim to the other direction. A life jacket would cause me problems. It's going to be drag. It's also one of the reasons we don't do hip waders, because now you really have a bucket of drag on you as you're trying to scramble out of the way. The only time I always say use hip waders is if you are in the wintertime having to do float operations, because now we do have a serious risk of frostbite or waterborne injury, so a wader would be a necessity. But we're going to go over that aspect on the float, and in general, we don't use waders when float operations. That was the one I did the float pivot maneuver on. That's another one. That's a flying boat. Both these are flying boats because they got a hole underneath them. Same thing, hole. Wheels are retracted. So that guy had just come out, and I think I have another picture of it. But one thing you do sometimes have to do is if the wind's coming this way, their natural tendency is to weather vane, right? So the seaplanes have no functional control until they are actually moving. So the wind wanted to push it so it just dragged itself along the rocks. So the only way to keep it perpendicular to the beach was for me to stand up to my thighs in the water and keep it perpendicular. And it just powered up and pulled away from my grip. I just kept it in line so it wouldn't be damaged. Again, this is some of the movements. That is a very normal, we're dragging it. There's a hard point on the tail that the ropes are tied to. All right. Generally, we avoid docks because most docks have stuff that screw up the wings and the tails. If it is a dock that we have to use, the tires are the best because what you're trying to do is protect what's below the water line, not above it. That's why normal boat bumpers don't work. It has to be submerged. You need about 40 feet per plane on the dock. Pilots need to be less than 1 foot in height. Nothing greater within 15 feet of the dock edge to prevent tail or wing strikes. These are the tires. What's nice is they're free. Go to Discount Tire or anything like that, they'll give them to you. They got to get rid of them anyways. And they're perfect because they halfway sink in the water. This is what you're trying to protect. Notice the water line is up here. It still continues to curve out under the water. For what we've determined, this was one of the earlier days, but what we figured out is basically, again, you're dealing with the weather vane issues. If it's a Beaver on up, a larger aircraft, you need 2 to 3 back here and at least 1 up there. But you need more back here because, again, the wind will try to push it this way and push the tail into the dock. So we're trying to protect that. Here's what the wheels look like. All right. Average slow height needs to be less than a foot. So if you do waterborne operations on the beach down there, make sure you have someone that actually can accurately tell what a swell height looks like. You don't want to say it's only a foot when it's 3 feet. You cannot be wrong on that. Talk about turboprop differences. Okay, this is a big one. This will save lives. Every year floats end up upside down in the water because they are an amphibian like the one back there, and their wheels are down when they're trying to do a water landing. Here's the trick. There isn't a safety mechanism really on the plane because they work in both worlds. They land on the land and they land on water, so whether the wheels are up, it's not in a bad position. It's not incorrect in terms of there's no way to have a machinery to tell us, oh, hey, your wheels are down or up. It's up to the pilot to remember which surface he's trying to land on. One of the things, because of human error, that does planes do flip. Of doing this since 2009, over a decade's worth of work, we have never had an accident, knock on wood, with any of our operations land or water based. I developed this wheels up float spotter protocol because I do not want to go to a funeral for one of my pilots or one of their passengers that is in there. So this is a last safety measure to make sure they don't end up upside down. You can save lives with this aspect. That's what happens if the wheels are deployed. This is really important. A lot of times on the smaller planes, that front wheel always kind of looks like it's down. If they're 1,000 feet up in the air, it's hard with a pair of binoculars to know if it's up or down. But if you see that wheel below the step, it's down. And that's going to end up how it's going to look if it tries to land. Whoever's on the radio talking to the planes, if you're doing water-based operations, someone had better be calling November 7 Charlie 1 or whatever their tail number is. Your wheels are down aboard. Go around, go around. Don't let them land. Get those wheels up, otherwise you're going to have a problem. Here's another picture. Again, see how the wheel's below this step? That is something that's pretty easy to see from binoculars. That needs to be tucked up behind the step, otherwise they're deployed and you're going to have a problem. You might see one of these. It's a Lake Amphib. That is one of the planes that's flying for us on June 18th. All right, rotary response, some very specific stuff here. Basically, again, pilots on the left side, make sure he sees you. Don't approach it unless he sees you. Generally approach from the side or 45-degree angle to the front, but within visual acuity. A lot of times the crew mechanic will jump out and he'll wave you in, he or she, but don't just approach. Make sure they know you're coming.
All the helicopter pilots that I've ever flown you're on the right side,
Oh, right side?
on a helicopter.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, right, the guy with the control stick, normally there's whichever one, just make sure somebody has acknowledged you there from the front. But yeah, normally the pilot's on the right side for the helicopter. This is a big one for a Chinook. John will probably, so I was trained in the military with air assault. Chinooks, you don't approach from the front unless you want to be a few feet shorter. That front rotor blade only is about 4 feet off the ground. That's why they always approach from the back, or they wait for the crew chief to pop out the side. And always keep low.
If you do not know, do not go.
Huh?
If you do not know, do not go.
Yes. Let's see here.
I like that, write that down.
I'll do that later. Let's see here. All right, so in some cases, you might have helicopters and amphibians in the same proximity, and this would actually same be with the lands too. Helicopters can have a huge downdraft. Blackhawks can be up to 70 miles an hour. I've actually sat underneath one when my search and rescue training, and it will knock you on your butt if you're not ready for that and you're too close. Thing is, when you start dealing with smaller aircraft and that same prop wash, that can cause problems. What we figured out is you basically want to be about 200, have about a 200-yard separation if they're bringing in a sling load, and then you got seaplanes and stuff also in the same proximity. You got to separate the two. One of the things too is if you are having to do joint operations, one of our locations we did that, put the bigger amphibians near the helicopter and the smaller ones further away. Bigger ones will be less likely to have issues with the downdraft. All right, safety cloth in. So, here we go. Good pair of boots. For those that are watching this online, these are military jungle boots. There's a specific reason why this is what I wear anytime we actually do live operations on the tarmac. If there's any possibility of waterborne operations also co-located. These vents, if you noticed in the videos and the pictures, half the time I'm pretty much wet up to here. These drain. So if you have smart wool socks, wool material, no cotton, it will empty out as you're going in and out of the water, and you're not just having a boot full of water that's slushing around and give you a trench foot. Okay? So this is what I tend to recommend is this. This works good in both land and water-based environments. If you're just land, you still want boots of some kind. Protects your feet and keeps you safe. And if you're running in and out of stuff, if you're going up the ladder on the amphibians, less chance you're going to wrench your ankle.
Or you can cut a hole in your boot. That'll work.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. That might screw up your structural, your life of your boots. Okay, we have a policy. No hats. There's a specific reason. It's a little bit less of an issue here. BLI, it's a huge issue because you have rows and rows of planes. So if I'm walking behind this plane and its prop wash does that, and then there's a plane right behind me that's starting up and this gets chewed up in the prop or it's a jet and gets sucked into the engine, now you have a really unhappy pilot, and however many hundreds of people that plane could have saved is probably not going to happen either because it doesn't take much to off-balance a prop. It really doesn't. So no hats on the tarmac. If you have to have a hat, you want something with a chin strap so you can get that under your chin, and if you do walk behind one of these planes, this doesn't go flying into the plane behind you.
And you can wear a sweatband if it's tight around your head with no hat.
So for people like me who don't have hair there, what you'll see when I tend to go and do drills, and I'm working on the tarmac, a do-rag. Basically, this is not going to get blown anywhere, and I don't get a nice big fat sunburn while I'm on the tarmac on my top of my head, which that hurts. So that's really the headgear that you want to do. Again, when you're doing the seaplanes especially, we generally just no headgear at all if you don't have to. Having the helmet gives you a false sense of security, and you're not paying as close of attention to where your head is and some of the components you could break off. You can pass these along. These are some really good safety glasses. Those are good to have. There's a lot. Prop wash, you can start throwing dust and debris all over the place, so you want to protect your eyes. These guys are really good. What's important with the gloves is you want to have knuckle busters. Really good padding on the tops of the hands, so if you're trying to put something in a plane, you don't rake it against the underside of the plane. Inside of the planes are not that cushy. Especially some of the other ones where you might be putting cargo in the back area. There's a really good way to, bust your knuckle if you've been doing that a long time all during the day. The other one is we want gloves that are form-fitted and close. Reason being, if I'm tying down cargo and stuff like that, I need to be able to tie a knot and to be able to feel what's going on around me and not have something that's big and bulky. So this is just a pair of mechanics gloves. Any hardware store has them, stuff like that. You guys can pass that around. And then I always have a rope bag. It's got 550 cord. And other types of rope and stuff for basically if you need to tie things in. You always want to have a bunch of extra rope, 550 cord on hand in case the pilot shows up and we need to do some additional securing of material. They have to tie everything. It's a 4-dimensional, top, bottom, left, right. environment that has to be absolutely solid. These loads can't shift. If a load shifts in midair, it's called trim, but basically it puts the plane out of trim, out of balance, and that can cause them to crash. So they has got to be tied down nice and tight. The other thing I normally wear is this. It's got a good pair of scissors. And one of the key things is it has a nice reach in there. Knife. So you guys pass that around. This is a good safety knife. It's got a seatbelt cutter. So if we, unfortunately, we've never had accidents, but if you get in a situation, you got to get someone out of a plane and cut them loose. You can cut through the seatbelt. It's got a nub on the front to knock out a window. It's got an easily deployable knife.
Where do you get that knife?
Amazon. Okay, pretty much any gun store or outdoor outfit.
Okay.
But that's just some of the stuff we always carry. Oh wait. When the helicopter is landing, basically take a knee, head to the ground, wait for him to stop and slow down. There's a lot of push out of air that comes when they flare to do their final approach, and that's when everything's just going to blow around. Especially if you're a Chinook. I was trained in air assault, so I got to ground grad a Chinook. And I think basically right before it landed, I just got hit with like a huge wave of dust, and it was essentially just, okay. So they have a lot of wash. All right. Yeah, we can go over that. So here's some helicopter hand signals. Again, Ron has this, so you guys can go over it and practice it. Here's a life flight helicopter. This is the area on Lake Whatcom where we're doing water and land-based operations. So that's where we developed, okay, what do we need to do as far as prop wash? Thankfully, this guy is just the Airlift Northwest helicopter. Has far less of a prop wash than a Chinook or a Blackhawk. So if you notice here and here, these are exhaust jets for helicopters that have the turbo. That's a lot of hot air that's there. Also, you got the tail rotor. This is the crew chief. Once they landed, we're waiting for this person to jump out and say, yeah, I can come close or not. Otherwise, we just stayed well clear of it. Again, pilot's area, the crew chief said come, it's now shut down. And you just never go into this area if it's running at all, okay? Remember, you can't see the propellers, you can't see the tail rotors, you can't see them when they're going. You just need to stay clear. That one has a back entrance. Okay, back to the wheels up spotters. Okay, so Reed, can I just click on that? It should work?
It should work.
Okay, this is a video of a plane that landed with its wheels down. This is what we're trying to stop. This is what the wheels up spotters are for. You are their life safety. You can't miss this. Works. Oh wait, I'm in there. There we go. Showing up. Good. Okay, that's what it looks like when that gets, and do not let them land with the wheels up. Down, sorry. Yeah, yes, wheels down. Let them land with the wheels up, not down. We don't want them down, all right? So you see the plane about to do that, someone had better be yelling as loud as he can on that radio, go around, go around, go around. And even if you can't determine the tail number, just yell go around. Just do something to avoid, get them to stop. And we normally use a VHF on an airband, is what allows you to talk to the pilots.
Like this.
Yeah. Read, can you
ICOM A25N.
Okay. So basically what you do is you have two people in tandem. You have someone with a radio, you have someone right next to him with binoculars. Every plane that's coming in that's an amphibian, they should be checking for those wheels. If the wheels are down, you tap him on the shoulder, get his attention, and tell him, hey, call that one out, get him to go around, the wheels are down. Okay? And that's the basis of it. That's what the Wheels Up Spotter protocol is about. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Oh, yes.
So on the south end of the island, we have a lot of areas there where the roads will break up, trees will go down. So obviously, when Langley gets all their supplies, it may take a long time for them to get out. Like up to me, I'm out in Skagit Edward. There's no way they can get out there for a while. So what about helicopter airdrops?
Sling loads?
Yeah.
That's something that will more than likely happen. Currently within our fleet, we don't have any helicopters. That's where you're back to the military, the Navy. And I think I'd love your opinion on this, being from your military background. What I've seen on the East Coast is the military assets, especially those, are going to end up getting sucked into Seattle, Tacoma, the major cities. You're not going to see any of those up here, if ever, at least not right away. But can you comment on that?
That's correct, and also it takes time. They're doing other things to get people there, to get the crews together, and then to get them to where you're at. Now, sometimes it works out. On the Oso mission, on Whidbey Island, the Navy planes were up there right away. The helicopters, they have their own rescue thing, so an isolated thing, yeah, you might be able to get something there quickly. But then it gets down to triage. Where are they going first? What do we have? And it goes to fuel and all the other stuff, safety stuff that they've got to go through to be able to go.
So that's the problem. I would say honestly, for every one helicopter, there's probably 30 plus general aviation aircraft. It's a numbers game. There just is not enough helicopters to cover everyone, in part because they're much more expensive to maintain, much more harder to fly, and there just isn't the same population density of them. Does that answer your question? Okay. Okay, we pretty much did all that. Situation. This is talking about some of the structure. And again, go around, do not land. That's what you're yelling over the radio. If you can identify the tail number, then call that out first. If it's that video and you're turning around and that's what you're seeing, just go around. Everyone go around. Just get the message out and sort out who it is later. Just don't let them land. I talked about that. All right, one thing, when you saw the planes that were coming out of the water, if you notice, a lot of those, if they have a big nose, they now have a blind side on the right. So you should have somebody that is in eye contact with the pilot, somebody on the far other side, the blind side, that can contact with them, so you don't have him run into something or someone, or somebody get in the wrong place at the wrong time. All right, so I'll use this one. Yeah, all right, okay. So remember when we talked about the crosswind? This is the only time you'll be within half a foot of a moving propeller. Okay? He's already left my grass, so it's walking away. We didn't get a good picture when he was running, unfortunately. But my arms were right where that front strut is, right where the front strut is on that plane behind you. I was just forward of that, in between the propeller and the front strut, but in direct contact with the pilot. And I was pushing into the wind to keep it perpendicular, as the propeller was probably half an arm's width from my head. It was a safe thing to do because I know what I'm doing, and I've been working with you guys long enough. It was the only way to keep this plane in this direction off the beach and not get chewed up because the wind was pushing him right parallel with the beach. It was the only way he was getting out of there. He powered up, and then basically he just powered up and went, and I just let my hands come off as soon as I felt him start to go. And the other one is I duck. Now you see I have pretty good clearance, so it's not a huge issue. But that is, remember, it's a 360-degree environment you're working in. You always got to watch for stuff above your head when you're doing this on land and water. Okay? That's universal. All right, so we like to use the Alpha, Bravo, the numeric letter communication. What you're going to find, especially on a windy day like this, if you're trying to talk over the radio and identify aircraft, if you try to say N31KF, which is the airplane behind you, over an FRS on a windy day, guarantee you some of those letters aren't going to come through. You need to go November 31 Kilo Foxtrot. You need to use these. This needs to be second language to you. And not just the hams, but the ground crew, anyone with the FRS radio that's managing this flow of aircraft needs to know this language. Because in high wind conditions, that's how you're going to be able to identify people. Another example, she's holding the flag that I was holding earlier. The plane goes, oh yeah, orange flag, that's where I got to park. You don't even need communication. All right, this is the land-based stuff. This is a hard point. You can push, pull on that. Structures, you can do this. Now some of these aircraft, see this boot? It has a little cover over the wheel. Don't touch that. Don't step on that. That's a very fragile area. That could seriously screw up a plane. You might actually ground it. You could damage it and bind up the wheel. Okay. Protruding part, don't touch. A lot of times they'll have stuff on the spine. That's an antenna we don't touch. If you touch the door, most of these doors have 1, 2 pins holding it on and not much else. That's not something to hold on to and try to like heft your whole weight up on. You want to use the frame of the door frame. I don't think we have pilots here. You don't generally see handles on this side, right? It's basically just grabbing the frame or these hard points here. They're on the inside. Okay. So those are the hard points. That's the only place you should be touching these planes. Okay, sometimes they have cargo parts in the front or the back. Pilot will show you where those are, let them load, or give you guidance on that. Again, when there's no one in the plane, so we're not too worried about that. We're not going to mess with the propeller, but you just come in it from the side. Actually, come in it. Don't come forward of the wing root, the support strut. You're going to be pretty safe as long as you're behind the support strut. And make sure the pilot can see you. On the ground marshaller side, this is important. This is something we learned last year's drill. You can have situations, and I'll tell you the specific situation. Basically, a mechanic tightened a throttle nut too tight. The plane left Bellingham International without any problems, didn't have any problems in the air, but when it landed at Walla Walla, it wasn't a runaway engine, but it was stuck on full throttle. So that can create problems, obviously. So the pilot was fighting with his plane and trying to get it under control, and the brake slipped a little bit. And the 2 ground marshallers basically dove out of the way to not get chopped up. If you have ground marshallers, space is your safety. You need to think in terms of, if it lurches forward, do I have enough space to jump out of the way and react? And honestly, if it's a single engine airplane, as long as the pilot can see you, I would stay a little off center and not directly in front of the propeller. Give you a little more room to get out of the way. The other one is, and the pilots can, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if you have a ground marshaller, you're going to go to where he is. So your ground marshallers need to be positioned where you want the plane to park, because that's what you're going to draw them to. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. But space, don't get too close to the front. That's a big one. The other one is, you might see amphibians on this one. We do have amphibians. Not all, especially the ones with the pontoons, not all those have brakes. They use power differential steering and things like that. So another reason why you don't want to get too close, you want to keep your spacing. Okay? Hand signals for planes. That's what you guys need to know. There's a little difference between helicopters and planes. That's why I got both sets on here. Oh, sweet. We don't have to go back. All right. So we're going to do this video. This is an example of why we don't touch the propeller. So what he is doing is a very normal thing. He just made one little error that nearly ended his life. Here you go. Checking the edge of the prop. Don't touch the props.
Question on that, he's checking the edge of the prop, but you would leave that to the pilot.
The pilot would be the only one doing that, but my main concern is like when you're dealing with amphibians, you saw how we're in the front moving the plane around. Let's say you're on the pontoon trying to get someone in and out and you lose your balance. Just go in the water. Don't grab the prop. You might start something else. Okay. So we've talked about prop wash a couple of times. I want you to see what it looks like. And I guarantee you the prop wash from this twin engine plane behind you is enough. If you're close enough, you'll have a hard time getting a car door open. The bigger the airplane, the bigger the wind factor it's going to cause.
Because you have the sun behind you, it helps get a nice, really good shot.
So watch what happens with him.
There's a whole group over there too.
Going flying. So no loose clothing, no hats, make sure there's no debris on the airsfield. That's what the prop wash does. And that, I mean, all these planes will do that. They kick up a lot of wind. If it is a turbocharged, this is not a turboprop. There's a difference. A turbocharged aircraft, meaning it's got a compressor in it to give it extra boost. When they park, they'll still idle for another 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, they're not going to shut down right away, so don't assume that. And you can't tell the difference of a non-turbo and a turbo aircraft exteriorly. But if their plane is still continuing to idle after it stops, just give it distance. The pilot will come out when he's ready to let you come out. But they don't always quit right away when they stop. And the reason is basically the metallic elements within the engine block for a turbocharged aircraft, if they shut down too quick, can cause damage to the engine. So they have to let it idle and cool down a little bit. Some other notes. Let's see here. We might actually end up having to do this with you guys. You shouldn't have to do it from your end, but in some cases we've had to do it in flight groups of 3 to 4. We did this when we moved the Impact Northwest SAR team between Point Roberts and BLI. Basically what it is they all take off in a group. It just became a airspace management process and ground management. And basically what you're doing is, you load up as a group, they get prepped as a group, and then they leave as a group. The key is the first one that's leaving is normally the command that's talking to the tower. The other 2 are just listening in and following that first plane's lead. Another key aspect is it has to be in sequential order of speed. You don't want the fastest guy, the last one off, because he's going to overtake the other 2, and then you end up looking like a dogfight and you all trying to not hit each other. So they need to make sure they take off fastest to slowest. That's something we just learned last year when we moved the SAR team. Triage, I guess we already know that. Talked about that. The glasses, you all saw that. Okay, yeah. And my knife, you saw that too, right?
Yes.
Okay, it's all over there. All right.
Question is, will you see it again?
Hopefully, I kind of need those. Basically summarize, yeah. So it can be a very safe environment. You just need to be aware of what you're doing. You need to remember these aspects of it to be safe. I have 2 forms I wanted to familiarize yourself with. I just want to show you, these are the forms we'll be using for June 18th. And they're pretty straightforward. One, you're not even going to have to do anything with. There we go. And the other one is just a reminder to make sure it gets filled out and comes back to my base. All right, so this is the data material identification label. This is what's on all the packages that are going to come out to you. Has the contents, tail number of the plane it came in on, where it came from, BLI. Here it'll say BLI and then line KOKH. That let us know that it is outbound for you guys. And then on here you have the date it was sealed and then the date it was shipped and how much it weighs. So not really too much for you guys to do with that, but that's what that form looks like. This is the one, yeah, okay. Can you see that?
Yep.
All right, this is important. Help the pilots remember to do this. And I guess this would be, you'd be the one signing this one. Because this has to come back to me. This is our paper trail. So again, tail number, destination, KOKH. This is the pilot. Person completing the load block. Yeah, so that would be the pilot. Cargo weight. So basically loaded cargo weight. Pilot writes his name, pilot initial, destination acceptance. So Christina is going to sign on that second line right there. That lets us know that you got it. And then it goes back with that pilot to BLI. And we keep all those records. And receive time and date. And then inside here is just to itemize what actually was on the plane that was delivered.
So
That's
it's
it.
one of those per aircraft.
One per aircraft every single time they come in. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions?
Where do you got forms?
I have them.
Okay.
Yeah, I can send them to you if you want. All right, yeah, that's it. You guys can have our lunch break, and then when we get back from lunch, we can go over the hands-on. And he would tell the pilot, you have to watch the blind side for the pilot. You got to keep the pilot and the plane safe, okay? When that nose goes up, especially if it's a tail dragger, it can cause problems. So that's one of the key things. Again, always eye contact with the pilot. If you're trying to ground guide, you know, have some distance. You know, if he loses control, then try. Now you can see where, let's say you have one of those cases where you've got planes coming and going on the beach, and the master ground marshal that's managing it, things get messed up. In a disaster, high stress environment, everyone's on a rush and panicking. You gotta expect things to go wrong. So you have to account for that. If I just push a plane out and I turn around and I'm looking at this, and I'm up to my legs here in the water, I'm not going to get out of the way very quickly if I try to walk. My best bet is just to dive, literally, or in this particular case, just to fall back. Both those struts are above the water line. And I can just let him go over me and I'll be fine. Now there had better be someone on the ground jumping and yelling or doing something to let him know he just about ran me over. Okay? But that's why we create that buffer. You're starting to do a wing pivot maneuver, and you're in that situation where you're having to do a lot more water handling than someone in the water of depth. You got to watch that buffer zone and make sure that your people are protected. Keep that in mind. So the crosswind takeoff from a beach, the one that I showed in the video. This is what it looks like. Basically, I'm going to do it from this side. You would do it from the pilot side, but we can't all fit over there, so just for demonstration purposes, so you can see what we're doing. Basically, the pilot would be here. If the beach is like that, and the wind's trying to push the plane into the beach, it has no control against that until it goes forward, which means it's going to scream, and then be able to actually use the water runners. The safest way to do it so this plane does not get tore up or damaged, punch a hole in the float. I'm going to have my hands right here, and I will be most likely probably up to here, my thighs, in the water. I'm not holding on to it, I'm just flat-handed pushing against it to keep it perpendicular. You see how close my head is to the prop? Now this is not unsafe, because I know what to expect and what's occurring. I know I'm going to keep my head low, but I can also look at the pilot, and I'm going to communicate with him, and basically all he's going to do is turn it over, and then gun it, and all I'm doing is just kind of letting my hands run across the side as it goes, and then duck my head to make sure the tail doesn't get. And that allows the plane to be completely safe, and you to be safe too at the same time. But now you see why you have the jungle boots, because when I walk out of the water, my socks will drain, and I'm not wearing, I don't have this big slosh of water.
So you're on the front, to the front of the strut between the, not just.
You have to, because basically what's happening is the wind is hitting this big flat surface area and using it like a sail and pushing it right back into the beach. So the only way you have enough leverage to go against that is, I mean, we weigh about 160 and this weighs 5 times as much as I do, and it has a big wide surface area, so you get a good strong wind. You're kind of, might need 2 people sometimes. So, but you're just keeping it low and you're pushing against it. But this is where about, you can't go further forward, but that's about where you have to be to have any leverage to keep it off the beach.
So how do you, if the wind's coming from that far wall over there,
Yeah,
and the beach is behind the
perpendicular.
right? What's going to happen is as soon as he clears enough that he's on the floats, the tail's going to want to come at you if you're right there. Because the surface, the sail area is going to be driven by the by the vertical stabilizer. So this plane's going to want to go towards the ocean and turn left, because he's going to want to head into the wind to take off. So how do you keep from getting hit by the back end there if you're that far forward?
If it's a bigger plane, what you'd probably have to do is
2 people. Yeah.
You'd have to use 2 people and you'd both be doing the same thing. That's a good point. When we did it with the 185, I think it's just the way the wind was, it wasn't that strong. And basically, once he got going, all I had to do was just kind of back away and he was able to, he had enough forward momentum.
Yeah, but he had
rudder
enough engine
control.
power to defeat the wind.
Yeah.
that was hitting.
Well, and he had rudder control once he started going. But he needed me here to start it up and to get it underpowered to start going forward. So you would have rudder control. It was that one that was the first video. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, you're right. If it's a beaver or an otter, those are twice this size. You actually would want 2 people. You'd want someone here and then someone there just to keep it, in alignment. Like I said, once it starts to go, they go quick. Once they power up. So you literally, you're just there to keep it, and then once it starts going, you just back off.
Would you ever have the person in the rear pulling on the line to try to pull this tail around a little bit, or?
Not really.
You should never pull on those wires ever.
Well,
No, he was talking about this. This here. The only thing where I was thinking where you might use a rope potentially on the opposite downwind side would be if I had this plane here, another here, and this was the middle one, and I didn't want it to start going forward and then the wind catch it with, like have it be, so you have the front of the other plane here, I mean obviously not this close, but here, that much gets clear of the row of planes, which means now it's out of the windbreak and grabs it and takes the tail and tries to shove it into the other plane. So in that case, have him probably holding on to a rope, one of these ropes, off that rear anchor point. And you're not trying to stop the plane, because it will just drag you into the water. All you're doing is giving some back pressure to make sure that it gets totally clear of the other planes before it gets pushed by the wind. Rope and a float pivot maneuver. Same problem. So with the particular one that you saw in the video, we had, the beach was this way, okay? And it was the CB, which has the low wing and the pontoons. It sits pretty low in the water. And we couldn't keep it on the beach because basically the wind was bashing the pontoon on the shoreline. It was going to screw the plane up. So it had to either anchor or it had to come out. So we decided to have it come out. Problem was, it had to be tail out, so you had to get it this position to get on the ramp to get out. But the wind, every time he tried to bring his tail out, the wind would just push it back and he couldn't get his bow to the ramp. So the only solution that was going to work was to grab the outer pontoon, in this case a wing rope, but a pontoon, to anchor it so you could get the front end to where it needed to go. And this is one of those cases as a pivot point, because the water rudder it had wasn't big enough to counteract the big sail of the tail. So that's why we had to do that. And basically, if he's trying to come out this way, so in this case, let's say he would have to turn, he's trying to turn to get bow in this way to go out of the water.
He's turning clockwise?
So he's turning clockwise. This is your anchor point, whether it's a pontoon or it's a rope. I'm basically trying to get my picture here. So I'm pulling, I'm either be a front or behind, but I'm pulling back, so he's coming around me. But again, they don't have brakes. So if I there's a lot of community trust between me and the pilot to know that he can trust that when I let go, I got him in the right position. I'm not going to send him right off into another plane. Okay? Same thing, even if you had to do it with one of these, this would be the point you're doing it. You're not going to be able to do it from that because it's too high. You have no leverage point. You'd have to do it from the wing rope to provide some level of anchor point to pivot. That also goes right into why we don't grab these unless you know exactly why, when, and where to do that. Okay? So let's say it's a turboprop. If it's not a turboprop, you can tell the prop is behind the stub. So if you're dealing with a dock, this will always hit the dock first, not that. In a turboprop, your prop is about this far out. So if I grab this wing rope and become a pivot point, where's the prop going to go? And if you're all on the dock, that prop is going to eat Ray up alive. It's going to put it right into the dock and all of you.
Off the other side of the dock.
Well, yeah, you'd probably be jumping off that. But that's why we don't grab these. All you do, unless you're going to match speed with the drifting seaplane, is pivot the front right into the dock. You normally go for the wing ropes, or the strut ropes. These will be tied and anchored, not like this. They're normally anchored to this, or something like that. And a lot of times, just grab the front one and pull back, and that stops the whole plane. It doesn't throw it around.
So I hear a couple of things left to be unsaid.
Yeah.
His engine's running, right?
In case of, are we talking about docks?
No, the dock he's going to try to slide in, right?
Dock, if it's not a turbo, they'll just cut it and drift in.
Right. Okay. So we have a noise issue, and I'm hearing you say, who's ever in the water is also trying to make contact and have some communication with the marshaller, right?
Yeah, well,
unless you're doing both. Okay. Where I'm going with this is, if you can't yell, or you won't yell, your yelling won't be loud enough, whistles might work to grab someone's attention.
If you have a whistle, would be a good idea. Normally what it did, when we did the wing pivot maneuver, I knew that pilot extremely well, and basically just head nods. And it was just, yeah, go for it. I know we're ready. And just hold it on. And then that's it. He's just completely trusting in me to let go at the right time and put him in the right position. There isn't going to be a whole lot of communication because you're not going to be able to hear over the engine because it's right by you. When I'm doing this one and we're doing the crosswind takeoff, I'm so close to the pilot that really all he's doing is telling me all clear. I'm like, yep, and then that's it. There really isn't much more communication beyond that because it's just me to watch myself and keep myself out of his way and keep the plane safe. And that's the extent of that. Does that answer your question?
Adequately.
It's the best you can do. You really can't, unless you have a headset that is on this frequency, you're not going to be able to hear much other than well, really in this case, head signals, because your hands are occupied, of nods of yes, go, or not go. Visual signs, there are motions to cut power, stop, stuff like that the ground marshaller can do if you're coming out of the water. And that's going to be all those visual hand cues that we talked about in the PowerPoint. And a lot more is visual versus radio. Now, when we did stuff with Point Roberts, we were lucky. We had someone with a I think it was a VHF airband. So they had direct communication with the pilots once they landed. So they were able to jockey over the place that way. Not everyone's going to have that. Does that help? Yeah. Hard points. Grab this. Obviously, any of this is all, this takes the brunt of the landing, so if you can't hold on to it, it would be able to hold on to the plane when it lands on the water, so these are all okay. Any of this stuff we leave alone. We don't touch the cables, any of that. You're gonna mess the plane up, it's gonna cause a problem. You just leave that alone. Same with the water rudders. I mean, they're sturdy to a point, but you can see it'd be easy to mess that up, so if you start getting grabby with it. Horizontal stabilizer, this is one of the rear ones. Now when I was talking about if it moves, you don't really touch it. If you have to do any kind of jockeying, you're not really going to want to grab these areas because these are all control points that move and shift. You also don't want to grab anything where they come together. That's how you lose fingers. So, you know, basically, I've seen them use the outer edge to leverage it. This is where wing ropes come into play. It's parked, it's on the dock, we're having to do some kind of monkeying or adjustment, then people start using wing ropes a little bit to get things moving over around.
Not that I'm gonna touch it, but what's that?
Yes?
Yeah, what's that for?
So actually, remember that picture with the rope hanging out the back on that one seaplane? It's just it's an anchor point.
So can you actually grab that if you're directed to?
If you're directed to by the pilot, I think this is one that you can sometimes grab that. A lot of times this area here you can grab. This is solid. Really not wanting to touch any of those things. You don't have to.
You can push against.
Yeah, you can push against this, flat surfaces. Again, be gentle. You can put a screwdriver through these walls. They're not super. They're strong in a certain specific structural way for flight, not for manhandling. Okay. This is where we lost the transponder on the plane. Some of the control surfaces are on the underside, not on this one, but some are. And what happens is when we're trying to walk it up the beach to get it on land so it doesn't float away, if it's some of the smaller ones, you'll put it on your shoulder and kind of walk it up. But because he had his helmet, he wasn't aware of his headspace, and bang, well, there goes the transponder. So, and that's a problem when you try to fly over, per se, airspace that has an air traffic control, and they're like, ah, yeah, I'm at this location. And they're going, oh, we can't see you. That's because your transponder's not there anymore. That's what they need that for. So that's why we drop the helmets. You need to know where your head is. You can't get that false sense of security of, I don't need to pay attention. Life-saving.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm like, what the?
So that makes a huge life-saving difference. Or, 200-pound mixed load of metoprolol and digoxin, furosemide. I mean, these medications that people live or die by if they don't have it. Metoprolol. I have AFib. If I run out of my metoprolol, in about 2 days, I'm probably back in New York. Yeah. So even though they're small, if it's the right kind of thing, they can carry a lot of what's needed. All right, looks like we're going again. So if you are presented with one of these in one of the bigger versions, like again, otters, beavers, even 206s, your pontoons probably up to about your thigh. If you have to unload, what your best bet is going to be is to have someone here, another person here, and sitting on there, and then just pulling from the cabin, handing it to them and then to you. Then that would be your way to load and unload. So facing each other. What's nice is if he's sitting here, his back is against the strut, so he's actually got a really nice secure space to work and not have to worry about falling off. And then you just simply hand his stuff there and back. Okay?
Who's tying like if you're loading stuff, who's gonna tie that in there that's secure to the pilot?
Well, it would be the pilot.
Okay.
We're not pilots, and we're not going to substitute pilots for the responsibility for it. It's your aircraft. You guys know where tie points are usable. It is one of the reasons I use 550 cord. Some of these smaller planes, there isn't a huge amount of tie points. Kenmore Airs Otters, we use those for backboards and stuff, not actually outside of just drill, stagnant. You didn't fly anyone. Just really can't unless everything falls apart. But they have anchor points that are really kind of small anchor points as far as getting something through. So 550 cord works pretty good with a 550 pounds tensile strength. We use a lot of it. You can really strap things in quite well. So and that kind of covers that.
Sorry.
Any questions? This is the one. All right. I want everyone come around here. This is what you need to imprint in your memory. You see that back wheel? below this step, someone had better tell them he's about to land with his wheels down. Okay? You should not see the wheel below the step like you see it right now if it's about to land on water.
Doesn't matter who you are, tell somebody.
Yes, tell somebody. And you didn't get, tell the pilot.
Is there an indicator on his dash that faces down?
There is, but here's the thing. Is he landing on water or is he landing on land? He's not wrong, depending on what he's landing on. So it's just him as a human being, maybe having done 4 or 5 runs that day, remembering, wait, which gear am I landing on right now? Am I doing a water or a land? What's the gear in? That's that human factor. That's where I developed the binoculars and the guy next to him with the radio going, wait, get this guy, November 3-1, Kilo Foxtrot, your wheels are down, don't land, get him up. Eliminate that human factor. So it's easy enough to do, we're all human. Only thing is this one will kill. So you gotta make sure that doesn't happen.
Can I throw out a couple one-liners?
Yes.
All airplanes, with the exception of, I can't think of any, you only step where it's black.
Right.
That's not a step. That's designed to kick the water away from that surface and make it fly. So you only step where it's black on all airplanes. You can notice this has got black on top of this. That's a step also. You asked about how much weight. Most all of these airplanes can carry a total of 1,000 pounds. All these little 4-seat airplanes, 1,000 pounds. I have to get in to drive, so there goes 235 of them right off the bat. So then I got to put gas in. That's another 200 pounds. So I'm down to, real quickly, 500 pounds of cargo. But 500 pounds of cargo has to be put in a certain spot in the airplane. So who is asking about who ties it down? The pilot's going to tie it down. Because my airplane, I can put 125 behind the back seats, and then I got to split the rest of it. And I got to pay attention whether it goes in the front seats or the back seats, because the airplanes have to sit on that little pivot too much in the back, and it will not, you can't lower the nose. So that's who's going to be tying it down.
So I think you start working on these, and you start working up here. If there's anything protruding from the engine, don't touch it. It's probably hot. Beavers have exhaust portals coming off the radial engine that, it would be natural, but, I'm going to lose my water ready. Well, yeah, you grab that, you're not going to fall in the water, but it probably wouldn't have done any good because now you have a 3rd-degree burn on your hand. So, it's protruding from the frame, other than this, or this, or this, even beaver. Okay? All right, I think that covers that. Any other questions in regards to floats? Okay. All right, so let's move over here, because then he's just going to keep following, trying to come to me. Okay? You need to plant yourself where you want the plane to park. Sorry. And then he'll stop where he's supposed to, or you just give him the cross sign to stop. Okay? Like you were saying earlier, the black is what you can step on. I'm going to come around the back. You guys stay up here.
Sorry.
So in this case, that black belt that's on the top of the pontoon, it would see it on the wing root right here. This doesn't have any doors on this side though. It's on this side, so we would have a black strip here.
That's why I can't.
Again, this right here, this whole back part is one of the control ailerons. Don't step on that. That will jack things up. Again, these are strong in a structural way towards airframe and airflow, not physically someone stepping on them. There's a difference in how the force is applied. Okay? So you need to not step on anything that's moving as far as the control surfaces. This wing root is fine. In this case, again, with the on this side,
There's nothing I can do because,
okay?
well, actually, this doesn't have to
Then you
be
get your
plugged
pop
in.
wash, both sides
So
like
if I
this.
can find a
These are really big
plug
engines.
over
This plane
there,
has a lot of power
do you
to
want
it,
to do
so
this?
it's
I'll go
gonna-
look for a plug.
Your prop wash
As long as you're getting
it's way back.
give you the
Beyond the
sound.
tail. You have quite a distance of the tourist plane. Got the brakes. Surfaces. See all these things poking out? functional control aspects. Sometimes, oh, this one has one. Here we go. You got this. You got this little tube here. All of this control. This is a Bluetooth airspeed. Helps with airspeed. So if you start thumbing or grabbing or messing any of those things up, you just offline the plane. You lost tarmac space. That probably could have helped a couple hundred people, and now it's just a nice paperweight because you hit something that's really tiny and isn't meant to take pressure. So be careful around the aircraft of aiming for tree. I think that's about it. Again, this is why you have a four-dimensional environment. You always got to look up. When I talked about the Cessna SCAR, what we're talking about is you're not looking up, boom, right into the forehead. But this also is why we're not doing the helmet. You need to have that awareness. If you have a helmet, then you have this false sense, oh, my head's secure. I'm trying to think. Generally, you normally have this control function on the front wheel to help turn it.
Well, you shouldn't have a problem on these because they're on the tarmac.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're not gonna. You're not gonna. That's all the hands-on pivoting and stuff like that is all gonna be related to the flow world. Because remember, they're at the mercy of the wind and the waves, so they take more handling. These guys, they just power into where they want them to park, and then they're stopped and done. So that's why you see the difference where there's so much more with field operation, land-based operation, because basically there's just a lot less aircraft than there are. You don't have to handle the aircraft very much.
Sometimes if you are going to be moving maybe an airplane further back, something like that with a Cessna with a strut,
Yeah.
you can always push on the strut. That's what we typically do.
Yeah, these high wings are the struts. Where is the question?
You can push on the front, on the leading edge of a low wing, or often sometimes they'll have a handle in the back that pulls out.
Or the wing root at the side of the
But for pushing back, you're not going to be pivoting.
Yeah, I mean, so what he's talking about is if you had to push, you could push on the wing root. You would probably do the outer, well, no, actually, you'd want to push closer to the frame. Yeah, you need to push close to the frame. This is the strong point. I guess basically the only way you could push forward would be all the way back at the center of the tail, not the horizontal stabilizers, but the butt. And then, well, if they didn't have that. I mean, that's the only option. You can't push on the back of the wing because that's all your control surfaces.
Most airplanes don't need to go forward. The propeller, you'll taxi where you need to go. It's the problem you get pushed back. And when you push back, I'm a firm believer that I don't want anybody to go near a propeller, so I would never want anybody to push at the wing root, which would be a great place to push because you're not twisting it when you push. But the safety of going near the propeller, I'd rather have one guy push out where you're standing, and maybe another guy on the other side, they're standing, kind of push together. But yeah, the front edge of the wing is a great place to push.
The nose?
No, not the nose, the wing.
No, but if you had to push it straight back, would the nose be?
Your wings are strong.
If you need to push it straight back, one guy on that wing, one guy on that wing, and you just start pushing. And usually you have a little steering table. You can make the